Hello, everyone. Someone in one of the Facebook groups that I'm a member of recently asked, how do people prioritize and work throughout their day for productivity? Um, my first book I read on productivity was probably back in about 1997, so it's been a number of years, and I've gone through a number of systems. And this video is going to walk through the different systems I've used throughout that time to sort of show the evolution of how I do what I do. So the first system I worked with were active to-do lists. And what I mean by that is these are to-do lists that I added throughout the course of the day and worked off of throughout the course of the day. I didn't necessarily pre-plan anything, but what I did was I'd work through them. If something popped into my mind, I'd put them on a piece of paper to get them out of my mind. And it was essentially one giant to-do list. So I didn't have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I just had this giant list I would work off of. Sometimes they were in a notebook, sometimes they were on scraps of paper, backs of envelopes, and I'd keep these things together and I'd kind of work through them. From there, I transitioned to the 7 habits quadrants, focusing on tasks that were urgent, tasks that were important, and in a later video, I'll break those quadrants down if you're not familiar with them at all. From there, I transitioned back into to-do lists, but started pre-planning them. I would sit down the night before, I would write down a bunch of tasks I knew I needed to accomplish the next day, and I'd sort of work through them throughout the day. Anything I didn't complete would shift over to the next day. Sometimes things fell off before I got to them, but these pre-planned to-do lists allowed me to be a little bit more productive because I was putting thought into what I was doing. From there, and the system that I used for the longest period of time was the Ivy Lee 6 tasks method. I've touched on that before in some of my LinkedIn articles. I'll do a video on that a little bit later as well. But basically what it boils down to is you write the 6 most important tasks you have to do for a day, and you start with the first most important task, and you don't do anything else until that's done. Once you've completed there, you go on to number 2, and you don't do anything else until that's done. Then you move on to 3, and so on and so forth. With this method, if you didn't get through all 6 tasks, they rolled over to the next day. They were pre-planned, but it kept you focused on the big items that made the biggest impact in your life. From there, I read a lot about scheduling your day out in increments, so I started trying to do that, and I failed miserably the first time I tried. So I gave that about 30 days. From there, I transitioned back to the Ivy Lee 6 tasks again. Again, this is what I used the most and had the biggest impact on making me successful. Moving on from there, I moved into planning my days in 15-minute increments. And I started by planning those days a lot like the Ivy Lee method. I would think about the 5 or 6 most important things I needed to do the next day and set scheduled time in the day to do them. And I'd work on that. And I used that method for about a year. Moving on from there, starting in January of this year, I moved into 10-minute increments, which allowed me for better planning because some of those 15-minute increments, I really only needed about 10 minutes to get things done. So I've opened up the number of increments in the day. I get more done now, and I still pre-plan my day. I actually have my days started to be planned out about a week or 2 ahead of time, and then the night before, I go through and I fill out the day in its entirety. I try to leave no white space in my calendar, always planning something, always being ready to do something. This has been the evolution of how I've been productive. Guys, what have you done to be productive throughout the day? What systems do you use? Please leave a comment below and let me know.